Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Doom Productions podcast. This week, we have a special interview with one of our favorite filmmakers and friends, Mridul Chhibber. Mridul just released his newest film, Bring Back the Color, and on this episode this month, we sit down and we talk with him all about production, making his movie, symbols that run throughout his last three movies, and it's a really deep and rich conversation, and so I'm not going to waste any more time, and here's our episode. Welcome, Mridul. Welcome back to the channel. It's good to see you again.
Lovely to be here, as usual.
Oh, yeah. You just came out with a brand new feature film this year called Bring Back the Color. And if people didn't know, it is a kind of the ultimate, the final movie in this unofficial trilogy of yours, or official trilogy. I guess my first question for you is, do you view these three films as a part of an official trilogy, or is it more of like a stylistic, similar movies that you've made?
What's the difference between those two things?
Well, okay. So the way I would explain it, are these movies meant to be seen as a greater trilogy? Like these are a part of these three movies are a singular work of art, or is it three different works of art that you've made that just happen to have corresponding and related things throughout?
I think I view them as singular works of art, but they still are a trilogy. You know? It's like three paintings that I painted, but I would like to place them next to each other. And it's like intentionally designed to be placed next to each other, you know? That's how I view it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
cool.
It's like a gray area between
And I asked you this
official and unofficial, I would say.
No, that's all right. It's kind of weird to say because now all of a sudden we have to classify our works, our movies, and everything. And I asked this to you before we recorded, but how does it feel to have this third movie be out? I mean, take me through the journey from, I guess, making Egomaniac to Bring Back the Color.
Yeah, so actually when I made Egomaniac, I had written two scripts beforehand, which is Thank God for Drugs, Egomaniac with a Heart of Gold, but the first version, which is completely different to the one that you see as the film now. And basically while writing those two films, I was kind of bouncing the ideas from The Last Day of Childhood and incorporating them into these scripts. And that gave me a nice kind of through line of where I want to take this trilogy and what I want to explore next. So when I finished Egomaniac, I knew exactly what I would be doing next. And so that's why it was very fast for me to be able to make this film. So the process was literally just the normal execution process of a film. That was the process. There was no, there was no drama or anything. It was just execution, pure execution.
And so now that the movie is out, how does it feel?
It feels really interesting because I've had this sense of purpose for the last 3 years that I've been working towards, and this end goal of making these three films. And that the fact that that's done and I no longer kind of know what I want to do next was initially quite scary, but at the same time was very liberating because I can do whatever I want, but at the same time there's no guidelines. But it's interesting to think. I'm trying to think about cinema in a whole different way now, you know, and trying to take my next films in a completely new direction, which is very exciting for me.
So I do want to discuss where you're going next, but I don't want to get ahead of myself because I do have lots of questions on the current film. I guess for starters, as you probably know, I made a video about your last three movies. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What would you like to expand on? If you can remember, I have some things I can bring up, but I want to know just your basic reaction to all that?
First of all, I want to say that video like meant a lot to me because I basically grew up watching such videos about all my favorite filmmakers. And when that video released, that was the day that I was like, oh wow, the trilogy is complete. It didn't really hit me until that video came out. It didn't really hit me that like what I was trying to say has been absorbed by people until I saw someone kind of react to the work like that. And I would say that everything you said was like, I can't say that you're wrong about anything because it's a work of art, but you noticed a lot of things that I don't think people would. I try to film my films with stuff that you notice like after 100 years, and you're on the path of noticing those things, which is very exciting.
Yes. I'm on the eightfold path
Exactly.
of Mridul. Yes. So, and I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about your movies. I mean, I appreciate many things, but I think one of them is all the details that run throughout. And I thought I knew all of them, but then while cutting together that video, I would notice other things, right? Because I'm trying to find clips that line up with what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The one that blew me away, though, was I think it's in The Last Day of Childhood. It might be Egomaniac. I can't remember. Because, again, these works are so similar, they kind of blend and mold into one thing. In your newest film, you have an actor portraying a younger version of your character, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I feel like there's also an interpretation where he could also be like the children of your guys' characters, but I'm not going to go there yet. I'm just going to for here. He's running, but you have reversed time, and you were kind of tracking backwards, which is an opposite shot, which I believe was in Egomaniac, I want to say, or I think it was in Egomaniac, correct?
The end of Egomaniac.
That was the one that really blew me away because to me,
and it's the same.
It was
actor.
the same shot.
It's the same actor, the same kid doing it.
Was it
He's
really
wearing the same shot?
That's incredible. That's awesome. And that was one of those things where I'm like, oh my goodness, down to the specific shots recurring in each. There's recurring imagery
for sure.
What can you say about that shot of the child running forward, but reversing that in your newest film?
Well, I wanted... Wow, it's very hard to talk about this. You know, like, I don't know where I can step, where I can't. Anyways, so at the end of Egomaniac, there is a sense of this character looking back in flashbacks of his life, and that causing or leading towards some sort of downward spiral. And then I like to have some kind of link at the start and end of each film where you can just kind of, it flows very smoothly. And the running shot is something that I find very like provocative for some reason. I actually found that shot while writing those original scripts for Thank God for Drugs in Egomaniac, and it was just a very provocative shot to me. So that's why you kind of see it in both of those films.
Okay. Gosh, it's one of these days when I'm in Australia or you're over here, we're going to go out and we're going to get like a drink and we're going to like, I'm just going to hound you about all these details.
Yeah, I mean...
Because do not have enough time. I do not have enough time because you're making me think of all these other things.
I'm really glad that even after you made the video, you were noticing things. Like even after you kind of were like confident enough to have an analysis, you still were finding new things. And that's kind of the intention, you know? I try to structure my films as like there's a very strong universal kind of core that anyone can kind of feel. And it's generally like related to the experience of like growing up kind of. Within this within this 3 films, it's kind of based on that, like the experiences that you would have in that early stage of adulthood / last days of childhood. And then within that kind of universal framework, I can fill it within all these artistic things. And my favorite type of movies are the most entertaining movies and like fun movies mixed with like the more like, and when they can do like the art stuff at the same time, those two ideas of like making like a very emotional resonant piece while also doing something like brilliantly artistic, those are my favorite movies. So for this trilogy, that's what I was trying to go for.
And I think you totally did it. I mean, I rewatched your movies just before Bring Back the Color, and then I watched them again, and it was kind of on repeat, like the three movies. Sometimes I would just watch different parts from it because I wanted to see what was going on in preparing for the video and this interview and everything. One of the things that I think I said this in the video, but I think the leap from Egomaniac to Bring Back the Color, again, you were great at cinematography, you were great at blocking, but I think your blocking is so much clearer and stronger than it already was in your previous movies. The imagery is so much more evocative. I really get the sense like it is kind of this culmination of what you've been working on for the past 3 years. And I'm curious where you get your images from. Like the one that comes to mind is the image of the hands, right? And one's blue and one's red on the palms, and they're reaching out to each other, and it kind of pushes in. Where does an image like that come from?
So that there's a few of the shots that I kind of reference paintings. So that is kind of referencing the creation of Adam. But whenever I'm doing that, I try to add onto the painting while also commenting on, like, I want the painting and like having some understanding of the painting to also add value to the shot at the same time. So the fact that it is the creation of Adam should hopefully kind of foreshadow something maybe in the film. And also I want to add on to the painting. So the red and blue blood, kind of like a yin yang symbol almost has been created. I'm trying to add on to the kind of my artistic ancestors.
Yes. I love that. And I think in many ways, I appreciate that quite a bit. I mean, I know there's a lot of filmmakers or maybe critics out there who maybe might not appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think that is such an interesting form of intertextuality between different pieces of art and your movies and adding meaning and shaping how you view your movie. One of the things that I really get in this movie is now that you mentioned creation of Adam, is the religious symbolism and parallels in particular. It's pretty overt.
Yeah.
Are you, now again, I love it. I'm not speaking for myself, but are you scared that people might be turned off by how overt a parallel might become? Do you try to hide your influences or references like that, or does it not bother you?
Well, okay, so in terms of the references, I want to make it so that the piece can stand on its own. So even if you don't know the creation of Adam, you can still resonate with the emotion of that shot, and that's why it's additive. But then, like, knowing knowing the source actually adds value. Sometimes you kind of watch a movie and you can see the inspiration, and it takes away from the value of the piece because it's not adding anything to it, or it's not in conversation with it. But for me, it's like I want to be in conversation with everything that I reference. If I'm putting a song in there, I'm using it as like adding to the conversation of the song. And the whole idea of that, the way I reference things, comes from hip hop sampling. So in hip hop, you have a beat, like a classic beat, maybe an instrumental, and then they'll get that little piece and then they'll put it in the song, right? And sometimes it sounds good, but then also sometimes you can do some really interesting things where knowing the sample actually adds value to the song. And that's what happens with my favorite hip hop albums, where if you actually know the sample, you understand the song more and you understand what it's trying to say. So that general approach is what inspires my references.
That's awesome. That's real awesome. Going again specifically with your references.
Yeah.
Or I guess self-references in a way. Egomaniac culminates in the color purple.
Yep.
As does Bring Back the Color. And I'm curious if there was a specific piece of art that purple is associated with that you drew inspiration from for either one of those. Or do you want to keep that a secret?
Uh, the purple comes from something in reality. That is not from art. The
Okay,
red, blue, and purple thing is uh, it's my way of
that's you.
it's me. It's me and some people around me that may mean a lot to me.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay. I like it. I like it. Um, yeah, so many questions.
It's
Sorry.
all good.
Your
I love
movies
this.
your movies are
This is a
very
filmmaker's dream.
your movies are your movies are very dense. Has anyone told you that? They're packed with so much.
Yeah, I try to have every shot to be like very additive. It's like I try to form like a Jenga kind of tower where if you remove one shot, it'll all kind of fall down. But with that shot, it like adds to it.
Yeah.
So I that's why they're kind of only 50 minutes long because that's how I like to work, where like everything is essential. You can't look away.
Actually, yeah, actually, something I do want to ask about that makes me remind me something more concrete. The the runtime I've noticed because I've worked on, I'm working on a project that's very experimental and out there as well. I found that the longer the movie with a project like that, the less impactful it is. I found like 50 minutes is about a pretty solid runtime for a movie that really plays with the form and goes very experimental and expressionistic with everything.
Yeah.
Is there a specific reason why the movies have you found that as well, making this trilogy of movies, or do you have any dreams of making these movies longer?
So the 50-minute runtime, it's kind of like with these films, I'm like kind of, especially with Egomaniac and Bring Back the Color, there's like this sense of ego in the films where like I'm daring you to look away, you know? It's like I dare you to like not. I dare you to go on this phone, you know? Like I'm kind of daring the audience to like not pay attention because it's like that's on you, you know? But Bring Back the Color, there's like less of that. I think I do give moments of like rest and just kind of letting the emotion sink in, which kind of it's interesting how the mindset of the character is kind of like the mindset of the filmmaking in all three films, which is really fun and very unique, I think. I kind of forgot the question. What was the question?
Well, I was asking something on, I guess, an audience related. I found that when it came to making something experimental, 50 minutes is like that's a pretty perfect runtime for something that's experimental but long form. I was curious if for an audience member, because if it goes on any longer, I find that their eyes kind of glaze over. But if it goes for too shorter, it's usually not enough, and I can't really express everything I want to. I was curious if you have found that as well working on these three movies in terms of the audience reception or people watching the movie.
The crazy thing is that like when I make these movies, I don't think that they're that experimental. Like to me, I'm just making a normal movie, but somehow everyone else says it's really experimental. And so the runtime is not from the experimentality. It's more like I want the I want the I want the film to feel like an album that you're listening to. This whole trilogy is very musical, and I want something that you can kind of watch and then like be like, damn, like I just want to watch that straight away again, and it just feels like listening to an album again, you know. So that is kind of the goal with in terms of the runtime.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. And hey, it worked because again, I had it on repeat, these movies.
And there's so much packed in
the past few days.
There's so much packed in that like I don't know if I can make like a 90-minute film with so much like density. At this point, at last year's point at least. Maybe now I can because I've learned and can improve, but maybe last year I literally did not have the ability to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Something on a more technical note, as I've mentioned in the video I made, your VFX that you do, I think they're just so creative because again, they're simple. They seem simple anyways, the way you do them, but it doesn't ruin the beauty of it. And I think what you, correct me if I'm wrong, you strive for just like a beautiful composition and making the shot evocative, first and foremost. And I'm curious, if do the images come to you of that you would require special effects and you think, gee, I need to learn how to do this? Or is it something where you think to yourself, oh, I already know how to do this, I'm going to put this in this movie?
So in terms of how they come to me, so in Egomaniac, there's the first time you kind of see this in my films is in Egomaniac, there's like the kind of scene where the earth is exploding or whatever. And then you have kind of me in a nightclub. And what I wanted for that was to have the nightclub and the explosion to transition and have me like in front fading into the screen before the nightclub fades in. So I'm like kind of drunk in front of the explosion. That was the image in my head. So once I have the image in my head, I just think, I basically just, there's no questioning of, if I can do it or not. It's more like, okay, how do I do this? And I do get stuck on how can I possibly achieve that. But then eventually I come up with some creative solution. I don't have a green screen even, like I'm working with,
Really?
I don't have a green screen. All the VFX are done against.
How do you key that? How do you key yourself?
It is painful.
Oh my gosh. So are you rotoscoping frame by frame?
Sometimes I have to do that. Sometimes I can kind of get away with like a white wall and kind of adjust the lighting a little bit. But yeah, so it's like an image in my mind, and I don't actually even realize that I'm doing VFX until I see the final shot. And I'm like, oh damn, I just did VFX. Like to me, it's like the editing process is so mixed in together that I don't realize when I'm doing VFX or not. Especially at the end of Bring Back the Color, there's a shot where it's kind of like the opposite to a bird's eye perspective, I would say, where it's like to the sky. And I was compositing kind of 4 or 5 different layers. And to me, that's like very like normal in what I do, is I adjust the compositions of things and stuff. So at the end of it, I was like, damn, like this actually looks like this is a VFX shot, and I don't realize it until I finish it. But that's very normal for me to do in general. Like there's certain shots where I take a shot on set and I don't like the framing of it, and I will like extend the side of the room or something. And like I will like, there's some like really like detailed stuff that I do in the editing just to make the image look right. So that kind of phase between VFX and editing is very like loose to me.
Yeah, I agree. I've worked on projects where I do a lot of compositing and kind of what you talk about. I'm taking things, layering in, masking stuff out, and then the project comes out and I think, oh, wait, that was VFX what I just did. And it's kind of, it does bleed together, that relationship between editing and visual effects. Something specific, a specific image I asked about, or I talked about in the video, was the mirror shots in your movie. I talked about mirrors. I'm not going to ask you what it means, but I will ask you, what do you like about mirrors as an artist?
I like the fact that like someone has to confront themselves, and then I like the subjectivity of understanding who the character sees when they look in the mirror, or like, like it allows me to like be somewhat subjective in the visuals, because what the character sees is like a subjective thing. Like my films, I view as like a tricky like balance between subjectivity and objectivity. In The Lost Day of Childhood, you see a lot of that. Like I'm actually playing around with subjectivity and objectivity, where I have like a wide shot and it's like completely static, no camera movement, and then I'll go into the characters like close up and I'll crossfade and everything. So that's like when my obsession with this filmmaking like parallel was born. And then you can kind of see me kind of learning to play around with that and perfecting that, I would say, like in terms of what I want to achieve in film 3.
I'm hopping all around
I love
all
it.
here with all
This
the
is
questions, so I
amazing.
apologize.
I feel like hopping
There's a
around
lot.
creates a more fun discussion anyways, so it's good.
Okay. if you want to slow down and back up to another topic, please let me know. But I just kind of recently I realized how big the cast is for Bring Back the Color.
Yes.
In Last Day of Childhood, it's just you and your family. In Egomaniac, there's a couple more characters, but it's not too many. But in this, I mean, there are people. There's a whole societies essentially. You convey the idea. Obviously, you aren't using an entire neighborhood, but you're using quite a lot of actors and extras. And
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, how did you get all those folks involved?
So I was always scared to ask people to be involved in my projects. So in Lost Day of Childhood and Egomaniac, it's like, even when there was someone else involved, I was very concerned about using up that time and whatever. And, which I don't mind, because I like the raw nature of the first two films. I feel like it's just like a character study. Those two films, you kind of just get to know this individual. And then in film 3, I thought it would just be cool to extend that metaphor to the whole city. And when you have one person involved, and then you kind of just build a confidence. And it's just, I wrote the script and I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta ask all these people. So that's what happened. And then, like, most of the people, like the extras, I called up like the night before and was like, yo, and I would just call up everyone I know, and then like someone would come eventually. And sometimes we got to the location, and then there was no one that showed up, and then I would have to like be calling people, kind of completely last minute, especially because we were doing like 5 locations per day.
Oh my goodness! Wow,
it was pretty crazy. But yeah, that's kind of how it operated in terms of asking people. And the big thing I learned this year with the film, I guess, is that like you got to just ask. We went into like like a medical center for one of the scenes near the end, and literally
okay.
I went around to different medical centers and I was like, oh, can I use your room? And then like eventually someone said yes. So it's about being relentless, Yeah. And then also I had a cinematographer, and I had like kind of a crew. So I had a cinematographer, I had lighting. But it's tricky because those are like, that's like 50% of the movie. I filmed with like an actual crew. And then, okay, let me just get to the structure of actually filming it. So we probably had like a week, or maybe even 5 days or 6 days, somewhere around that, where I had a cinematographer, a lighter, and then like each day I would have like 3 or so actors. So that's kind of what I was working with every day. And then after that week, they were done, and it was just kind of, my process just became the same as making Egomaniac, where it was just me. But of course, this time I was much more like, I could ask people for help and stuff, which was great. But yeah, that was kind of how I filmed it. Probably half the film was filmed in that week of 6, I think it was 6 days. And then like probably half of the actual things that you see on screen were just me.
Yeah. And talk about the difference between filming with a crew and filming just by yourself.
It allows me to really focus on what matters. My process is basically telling the cinematographer exactly what I want in the image, how I imagine it, where I want the movement, what I want the general composition to be. And then he shows me what he's done. Sometimes he would change it up a little bit, which I am totally fine with. I want everybody to give me the ideas so I can steal them. And then, so sometimes what the cinematographer adds and changes, I really like. Sometimes I really don't like it. And then it's just a process of sticking to your guns, because sometimes you imagine something a certain way and then you just got to stick to what because to a certain extent, you're the only one that can see the movie in your head already. So if you want to push in on a certain shot and you know that there's going to be a push out a minute earlier, that's like kind of contrasts those two shots, then you know that, you know,
Right.
like the cinematographer doesn't necessarily know that. So there were some days that I was not a great director. There was one day in particular, the third day of the shooting, at the kind of night shoot, I became like very tyrannical with the shoot because things are not going smoothly. So I kind of became like, no, it has to be exactly what I'm saying. And you know, I realized that day that that was not good, and then I apologized to my lighting guy later in the day. So it's like, even if you make a mistake in terms of your directing and you maybe don't let the people be creative sometimes, then it's about just saying sorry and moving on, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Can you think of a shot or a moment in the film that wasn't in your script that you didn't think of, but was maybe something that the lighting guy or the cinematographer thought of that made it into the movie that you're like, oh, that's a great idea?
Yeah, one of my, like, of course, I'm like get like really hung up on little details, but so the details are kind of where I am impressed by the creativity. So there's a scene between my character and there's the red character Lloyd, and then there's like a dead body on the street on the floor at night, right? And there's kind of like you're going from two, like, I guess they're like mediums of the dialogue, and then my character has to look on the ground to the dead body, and then there's like a little camera movement which goes 180 degrees, and it kind of changes, like it like is breaking the 180 degree rule, like not breaking it, but it's just kind of transitioning away from the established 180 degree rule. And that little movement of like one side of the face to the other side was like really like that was a very clever thing that my cinematographer kind of thought of last minute. So like there's like a micro detail, there's a bunch of micro details like that which my cinematographer did, which I was really excited about. So he did a great job. I'm so proud of him. And then one of the shots that I kind of had to fight for my vision was in the flash. There's like a moment where I'm exiting a red party, and there's like these reversed flashbacks of me and the romantic kind of interest. And then with the flashbacks, I am pushing out, and then in like the kind of forward, like present tense, I'm pushing in. And that was like kind of probably the biggest debate that me and my cinematographer had, because he didn't want to film it like that, and I knew that it would be like much more impactful if I do that kind of reversal. So that's an example of like a little discussion that I had to have, where I had to stick to my guns. And that the other scene that I talked about earlier is an example of someone being creative and that adding to the project.
Yeah. I think that's always important for filmmakers, like we've kind of talked about before, is know what you can and can't change about your movie. Because if you know exactly what your movie is, you know what's crucial to making it happen and what's going to be important. And then you're free to experiment with the other stuff. But if you don't, then it could get real messy. So that's really cool. And what do you say to convince your cinematographer or any collaborator who says, I think it should be like this, but you know in your head the way it's going to be used, it's going to be more impactful if you, for instance, push in?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I'm so collaborative the other times, when I do say something, it means something, because that means I know what I'm talking about. There are times where, because of the lighting, we had to kind of adjust the scene. I literally like would change the scene just for the sake of the lighting. You know, so there's like, I am making sacrifices in terms of like the scene structure and everything for something that my cinematographer wants occasionally. But then ultimately I know that like breaking up that scene won't impact the story that much. But then like when I do say something and when I am particular about something, I want it to mean something. So it was kind of like the case where I would let everybody do whatever. If an actor wanted to change their dialogue, I would be like more than encouraging for them to like change the dialogue, you know? But then when I am like, no, you have to say this line in this particular way, then they will be like, understand that it's really important. Because if I'm rarely a tyrant, then when I am a tyrant, it counts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. I think we employ a similar kind of tactic here at Doomed. For the most part, we're pretty collaborative, but we know that if Ethan says it's got to be like this, Ethan's got a vision in mind, or Zach has a vision in mind in particular. Another unrelated question.
Well, I just want to say, like, because especially with my films, they're so visual that it's very hard to understand them on like a script level. Because I showed the people, like, everybody kind of believed in the vision because of me and not because of the script. Because the script doesn't really work as a script. These 3 films don't work as a script at all. And I'm very aware of that,
Yeah.
But it has to be that way. And because the process of getting them involved is the process of having them believe in me. So, like, at the end, it is like I am the director, so I don't mind calling the shots when I have to.
Yeah. Do you write scripts for all of these? Do you storyboard? What's your process like in that regards for planning?
So I write. So for the third, Bring Back the Color is my first scripted film. Just because there was so much involved with it, and I wanted it to feel like much more precise. I was okay with The Lost Day of Childhood and Egomaniac feeling like a raw kind of expression of like just certain emotions. But with film 3, I always knew that it has to be precise. Like every kind of Lost Day of Childhood is like a certain direction, and then Egomaniac is like the complete opposite of that direction, And I needed to fit it, like find the middle ground. And to do that, I needed to write a script. And my scripts, they're mostly just description. Like there's very little dialogue. Even if there is dialogue, I do write all the camera directions. I don't do storyboards because it's just such a time-consuming process. I really respect that process, but like just for the sake of efficiency, I just write out all the directorial stuff in the script.
That's great. That's
even
cool.
Like acting, like if I want the actor to be thinking about something, I'll write everything in the script. So the script is really
how
the
long
Bible.
was this script?
The script it's pretty much like probably 60 pages.
60 pages.
Yeah. It's like
nice.
All my scripts end up around 60 pages. I've never written a script. I think one of my scripts is like 63 pages, but with the style that I use, there's like so much information per minute that it's like there's no need.
Right. And are those artistic references in the script? Like, for instance, that hand moment? Did you reference the...
Yeah,
okay.
I do reference the painting.
Okay, cool.
So in the script, it would be like a frame like placed as the creation of Adam, and then it pushes into the hands, like something like that, Hello.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, we are joined by a surprise character, or surprise guest, or host, I should say.
Amazing. What's up?
It's all right. We're in the middle of a recording. Are you all ready to record, Zach? All right, go ahead and hit record on that. No. We're doing this the way we do our podcasts. Oh, it's all right. Go ahead and get set up, and we'll Mridul and I will chat. You can listen in, and then when you're ready, just let us know. Yeah, but with the storyboard stuff going forward, do you think you will plan to continue with your style of writing story, or scripts, or do you think you will stick to more improv, raw kind of style of playing your movies? What do you think you'll do in the future?
I think the next 3 films will be very so the way I view it is like Picasso had to like make his classical stuff to prove that he is a good artist before he could go crazy, So like for me, it's like everybody does the classical stuff. So I had to prove myself as an artist. Now I'm gonna prove myself as like, you know what? I'll make your normal films that you want me to make. You know, and I'll just make the like really amazing films. And then that's just to prove that like I can do it. And then I'll probably go crazy again. You know, it's like that's how I view it. You know, if I'm always being like super artistic and doing very untraditional things that like no one knows that if that comes from a place of not being able to do the classic stuff or the traditional filmmaking stuff, or if that comes from genuine like that's how I want to express myself.
I really relate to that so hard. Like I struggle with that quite a bit. It sounds like you found a nice balance, but I've definitely questioned of like, gee, do I really like experimental stuff because I'm not good at the other stuff, or am I good and I just prefer the experimental stuff? Like, it's an interesting dynamic between like those two types of movies.
Yeah, well, I don't really question if it's because I'm a good filmmaker. Like I just have like this like unbreakable self-belief, but it's more like, do other people, you know, like how will other people perceiving my work? You know, as much as like artists want to be like, oh, I'm making this for myself, like I do care about the viewer. And so that's kind of how I view it. And it would actually be pretty fun to work within like a traditional classical kind of way. It'll just be a new challenge, and I need new challenges. So like that is exciting to me. Yeah.
So you're going slightly more blockbuster with your next movie, or perhaps not blockbuster, a little more classical Hollywood narrative, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I actually mentioned in your last interview, and I've had this idea since like, you know, a long time. Everything is kind of like thought out beforehand. But like the first 3 films feel like music, and then the next 3 films feel like literature, and then I'll probably go movie in the next 3 films after that. So yeah.
Interesting. I like I don't know exactly what you mean, but I like how it's making me feel. I like that a lot.
That's what matters.
It's all about how you feel.
Don't try to understand it.
Exactly. Slightly unrelated, but related. What are your favorite books?
My favorite books. I think. So there's like certain types of stories that I really connect to, like. Ever since I was a kid, I could really connect to like the Pinocchio, Frankenstein, Paradise Lost kind of. I view those 3 texts as the same story, where it's kind of like a father-son dynamic. With Pinocchio, his father creates him, he has to run out of home. Frankenstein is a similar thing. With Paradise Lost, it's the same thing, but it's like on this religious level of God created Lucifer, he's sent to hell, you know. So I view those 3 texts as like the same base story, and I really connect to that kind of archetype. And you can like, for me, like Egomaniac is my Paradise Lost, Frankenstein, Pinocchio film. You know, that's how I interpret it. But yeah, so there's like I'm more interested in the ideas than the actual like novels, I guess. But yeah.
As you were saying that, I was like, Pinocchio, Frankenstein. I was like, my mind immediately went to Egomaniac, and I was like, wait a minute, he's done this story before.
Yeah,
he's done it.
Yeah, that was like, it's, yeah. I'm always gonna have like a bit of. I think people will understand Egomaniac like a lot later. Like I don't think they understand it in the same way that they understand Bring Back the Color. But one day people will understand Egomaniac. Right. Which I don't mind. Like people, I think I don't mind people not understanding. It's fine.
Well, again, I think a lot of people want to understand, and if they can't understand, they kind of turn away. And I think that limits yourself to your ability to appreciate and engage with different forms of art and different types of art because, again, a lot of times I think it's feeling based and what you
Yeah.
bring to the film rather than the film going 100% meeting you at where you are. Sometimes you got to go to the film. And I
Yeah, I
like how
think
your movies, I feel like the viewers have to go meet you halfway to a certain extent.
to a certain extent, I feel like with that kind of thing, there's like a sense of trusting the filmmaker or not. And I think I went very experimental without having an audience that trusts me. So like a few of them might be alienated. They're like, "Oh, what is he doing?" You know, because they just think that like I'm just doing things sporadically and not thought through. But it's like a very tricky balance between do you blame the audience for not trusting you or do you blame yourself for like not having them trust you yet, you know? Which is why I'm leaning towards more like classical stuff now because I just want to show people that they can trust me and I do like think through things a lot. Yeah.
Can you share what any bits of the narrative of your next film?
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be called Cult.
Okay. Okay. Exclusive. Well, I guess it's not exclusive. It's on Twitter.
Yeah. I put it up like 2 days ago. But I think yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I don't know exactly what I can say. Let's just say it's going to be from a whole other angle. And it's not going to be told the way that you expect it to be told. And there'll probably be a lot of long takes and stuff. It might not
Okay.
be editing driven, you know? Like all the ideas that I'm coming up with are like for these scenes that are like in long takes. So there's gonna be like a craft classicism kind of like sense of precision, I think.
That's awesome. Well, I think that title it
yeah.
brings a lot. It conjures a lot in the imagination.
Yeah, I mean, especially because you've, thought about the other films, it might conjure up a little more. You might have a bit more of an idea of where I'm going. But yeah. So I think like I've built up this Messiah figure. Now it's time to really think about it a bit more.
Wait a minute. Say that sentence again. Wait a minute. Was that a clue?
Oh, I don't know. Just talking. Everything's casual.
You keep your secrets. You keep your secrets, sir. I do have I'm gonna spill with you my half-baked theory, which I haven't sat down and like tried to work out the details.
Yeah.
So at the end of Egomaniac, and you know what? Just to be super like duper concise, I'm gonna actually pull it up on the timeline. So at the end of Egomaniac, right? Your main character dies. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen this movie. Your character dies, and as we're pulling out on him, he's laying on the floor. There's blood around him. Your your eyes are purple. Mm-hmm. Your eyes are purple, and we pull out, and we go into the sky effectively.
Yep.
Now, what I find really interesting about that. And in the preceding sequence, I should say, we see lots of different flashes of like childhood, bits of the character's life. There's a lot of memory going on to a certain extent, I feel like. And I think it's interesting that the camera moves up. And it starts where we began the film. And but purple is there in your eyes. And again, I said this is half-baked. I feel, perhaps narratively, there's a connection between Egomaniac and Bring Back the Color. Because your film, Bring Back the Color, it begins, not exactly, but it begins in childhood. Because it goes back, in a way. Not exactly. The first shot, I think it's of your face or your eye. You're looking in the mirror, and that character is also remembering, which is where the character at the end of Egomaniac started off. And it's in black and white. I think it's interesting that your character's in black and white and the world around him is in color. And I think, to me, again, it's half-baked. I feel like to a certain extent, it's like is Bring Back the Color the afterlife? Is Bring Back the Color like your character being reborn to a certain extent? I see a lot of overlap with the end of Egomaniac and Bring Back the Color, and I just had to spill with you my half-baked, not thought out idea theory.
Yeah.
But I feel like narratively there's some connection there, and I know you won't speak on it and confirm or deny it, but I just had to share that with you.
I do think like, yeah, it's very hard to answer this, you know? But it's if you feel that way, then it is that. But I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Yeah. I definitely. Okay, I will say this: when I make a new project, when I'm starting a new project, my instinct is like, how do I do the opposite of what I just did? That's where I start every project. When I made The Last Day of Childhood, my next thought was a movie called Thank God for Drugs, which is like, to me, seemed like a brash, like kind of like, I'm not a kid, you know? Like, that was my like idea, you know? And then Egomaniac is like, it starts off like so like abruptly, and it's like, this guy is like completely different. And even like, if you look, okay, I'm not gonna say that detailed, but then with Bring Back the Color, like Egomaniac is this very like singular film with like one perspective. And then to me, the opposite of that was making a film where you have a bit of characters to bounce off of, and you kind of like much more aware, like that like my character is very like immature, and there's like this awareness about that. And in terms of like, the thematics, I like opposites, you know.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Zach, are you recording? Why don't you jump in here, Zach? Did you get a chance to see Bring Back the Color?
I did, and it was wonderful. Absolutely. I went back the past 2 weeks anticipating this this interview for the podcast, and rewatched the previous two films as well. And just so fun. I love the editing, color grading. I loved your performance, especially in this latest one. I really enjoyed. I really felt like where he was coming from, in the situations that he was in all of your performances, but especially in this one, I found it very, very connectable too.
Yeah, it's like a very hyper subjective movie, except for like when I'm kind of moving away from his perspective. Apart from that, it's like I am trying to like just show you everything. Even like when he's in love with a girl, I'm trying to make you feel that love, you know? So that was my approach to everything in the film. So I'm glad it's like resonating. Yeah, like so like I think the performances are like a little heightened, but like I wanted it to like kind of exist in a movie world. So that's kind of what I was going for. Maybe some people like it, maybe some people don't. But even like I play like a very classical movie theme and like some of the sequences, because I wanted to like feel like a movie. That's the way I can explain it.
Yeah. It almost felt like archetypal and Shakespearean kind of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. And then I think I still like, there's like the basic Romeo and Juliet type of thing, but then I'm like trying to like play with that kind of expectation of where the story is going to go and maybe subvert that. And it's like always when I'm looking at stuff, I'm like looking at what's been done, and like it's always in conversation. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I really love the argument scene. That's like one of the scenes I'm the most proud of. The argument scene in the apartment between me and the romantic lead, like that is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Interesting. Why?
I don't know if I can tell you why, but it is my favorite scene.
Well, it's a great scene. I mean,
I will say that was that was where your performance was like, oh yeah, this is my favorite one of the three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with that argument, the great thing is like I feel like you're constantly kind of tossing between both of the characters, and I like did it. I feel like from my perspective, like you see like the girl side and you see the guy's side like really well. And it was like a very balanced argument. That was actually very hard to pull off, and that was the first thing that we shot, and so that's why I was just like on my like super duper A game when I shot it, because I tried to like kind of structure everything so the hard things are like first, and I knew that was going to be the trickiest scene, so that's what we got onto the first day of shooting.
Nice. And is that how you typically work now, or starting with the more difficult scenes early in the shoot?
Well, Egomaniac and Lost Day of Childhood was so iterative that there was no way to like, you know, think of it. But for the most part, yes. Yeah, the hard things are normally first, and then it's not just that; it's like about the actors. So I structure the shoot according to actor availability, and I try to waste the least amount of time for every people. I'm like super concerned about everyone's time on set. And people actually like this time. The surprising thing was like people would finish the scene and like stick around on set, and they were just enjoying the process so much, which made me feel a lot more confident about like wow, like this people are actually enjoying this like process even when they've done the main bit of their job. Like they still want to hang around and be involved, and yeah, I was blessed to be like with a great team this time as well. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Can you share with us the hardest day on set on Bring Back the Color? Was there a particularly difficult day?
Yes, there was. So the hardest day was when we shot in the midpoint kind of area of the film. There's this like traumatic thing that happens to the girl, and I was very careful about shooting that. And I had never like approached such a kind of topic where like I'm getting like someone else kind of like depicting them getting like physically assaulted, and that's like something I really like care about. So depicting it was a very like careful process for me, and like even editing it, like I didn't want to edit it for the longest time. That was like one of the last, like I was procrastinating to edit that for the longest time because I just didn't want to like confront it, I guess. But in the script it was always like exactly like how you see it on the film, but it was just definitely the trickiest day. And also I didn't have my cinematographer that day, so like he kind of had to go last minute. We was like we like planned it to have the cinematographer, but there something came up, so that was the trickiest day because I was just juggling like so much things.
Yeah. No, that sequence that you're talking about is really powerful. And without spoiling it, the technique of you play with time in a really interesting way in that sequence, which I think it makes it really strong and impactful, the way it's all edited and cut together and shot.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of this stuff comes from like things that I had like these like ideas like dissociation or like stuff like that where like I've kind of experienced some other person maybe experiencing that, and like I've had to deal with it, and it's like me like trying to learn to empathize with them, and the way I kind of do that is like think about how I'll portray it cinematically in like a very strange way. Like thinking about how I would like make a film about someone's experience is my way of like thinking like how to empathize with them in like frustrating moments. So like that was a super delicate thing to like do everything. Those are write, direct, edit. There was some like really tough editing challenge. I feel like the ending was a particularly big editing challenge. I was stuck on editing the ending for days because there's some very like complex intercutting involved. So yeah, those like challenges in all departments.
The final image of the film, I won't spoil it, but Was that always the final image, or is that something you discovered through editing?
That was like so there was like three images that came to me when I got the idea, and that was one of the three images.
Okay.
Like, and basically the three images are like, one is near the start, one is pretty much near the middle, and then the one is the very end. So yeah. I want to like share the images.
Sure.
So
Why not? It's your interview. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So the things that came to me while I was writing were the baby shot.
Right.
There's one shot of me and the girl walking out of a house, and I'm just like holding her hand, and it's like very muted colors. That was actually the very first image that came up. And there's one scene that I don't know if I want to spoil, but there's like one kind of like sequence that came to me as well that kind of formulated the project.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I think, I could sit here and chat with you all day. So Zach, do you have any final questions to ask? Because I know you kind of had to jump on a little bit later, so you can get as much Mridul time as I did.
I want some Zach questions.
Yeah.
Even last interview, there was not enough Zach questions.
I know, Zach. Ask all the questions you want. I'm just gonna sit and listen for a bit.
Oh man. What was your inspiration in regards to implementing more of the drone this time around? Because, I mean, you didn't really have much of the drone in Last Day of Childhood. You had a few very poignant shots with the drone in Egomaniac, and then you're using it a lot more in this one for generic scenes, transitions, all that stuff. What was kind of the inspiration behind that?
The inspiration is like I wanted to give the feeling of like a city, and like the landscape of the city was a bit more important this time. So that's why I kind of use more drones. For example, like there's a shot of like the jungle, and like I just needed a drone to show how big the jungle was to make it seem convincing, because like I drove to like a actual like jungle place to, like film that, So there's certain things where like you just the drone is also like really good if I don't have a cinematographer. I can like kind of work with the drone a little bit, and I could like some shots I'm doing camera movement while I'm acting, and the camera is moving, and I am like the drone is like hidden maybe behind like a piece of clothing, and like I am like doing like some camera movement, and I started that with Egomaniac. So the last shot of Egomaniac where I'm dead, that I am using a drone in that shot, and I'm moving the drone up.
You
while
sneaky,
I'm dead.
Crazy.
your hands under the couch. Is that where it is?
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. And that's like my favorite shot from that film too. So that's really cool.
Under the couch.
Yeah. I feel like now it's been some time, like I can say it, because like I didn't want to ruin the shot, like people thinking about it too much, but now it's been some time, I'll say it. So there is like stuff like that where basically when I make a film, I'm writing the most crazy stuff I can think of, and there's no like concept of like limitation, of like any kind of budgetary limitation. That's why in Egomaniac he like becomes famous. I have like a shot of him in the stadium, like it's like I would have had no clue how to do that, but like forcing myself into this situation made me like think of how to do that. So it's like I have this idea of like, oh, maybe his like eyes turn purple and it like floats into the sky, and it's like, okay, I don't have anyone like in my house for like the next week, and I need to get the shot. How do I do it? So it's like by any means necessary to achieve the vision, that has to be done.
Yeah, brilliant. Love the tricks to make things work.
And I do that a lot in
and I
film
love
crew
how
as well. Like there's a lot of shots where I like I'm using the drone like, and my hand is covered by like a clothing, or like I just use the drone to make the scale of the world feel bigger. What were you saying, Zach?
That's
I think I
cool.
interrupted you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, like, even with like other effects, like how you did the stadium in Egomaniac or other things like that, where it works with the style of the film, where it is convincing. Whereas, like, a lot of people, like at my school, would be like, "Well, I guess we can't do that scene. Guess
Yeah.
we got to come up with another project idea."
Yeah.
But you're like, "No, we're gonna make this work, and here's how we're gonna do it." And I think that's really cool. Yeah.
That's why. That's the thing. Like, you like. So people, there's like this whole thing of. Do you have you heard of manifestation? This is a very random topic, but it's basically like your beliefs kind of lead to your life or whatever, right? I don't really agree with it, but I do think beliefs strongly shape your reality, because if you believe that you can like obtain a shot, then even if I like spend 5 hours just sitting down and like just thinking of how I will do it, like I end up doing it. And there's like so many situations like that. And I'm like, actually, I find a lot of pleasure in like achieving something that I thought was impossible. Like I have like some strange addiction to that. So I just like, I'm very lucky to be addicted to that kind of thing, I guess, and not something else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Trying to think of other questions. I'm just like, I just saw Bring Back the Color today. Like that was the
Yeah.
first time I saw it, so it's still very fresh in my mind, and I'm just in awe.
Well,
so
what like
I don't know.
what is your general like? So one thing I think I could have improved on in Bring Back the Color, and honestly, it's like the only thing that I'm like kind of I wish I had changed is just the way that we shot the audio. So
How did you do the audio?
so the audio. So usually I have like the audio like mic on the camera, which is fine usually. But this time we were using like a different camera and a different lens, so the focus changing was making much more noise than I had expected. So it kind of like muffles the audio a little bit here and there. And that's like literally the only thing I would change. Some people are like complaining about the mix, that I mix the sound, the music too loud. I was actually compromising with the mix, in my opinion. Like I actually wanted the music to be louder in certain portions, and this was my compromise. But I don't think that the actual problem is the mix. I think the actual problem is the way we recorded the sound, and next time I will fix that up.
I have a question for you,
okay.
Mridul, and I guess you too, Zach, actually, for both of you. I want to know if anyone else relates to this thing that I have.
Okay.
In a movie, if there's a needle drop, if they play like a pop song or a rock, or whatever kind of, if they play a song,
Yeah.
I have an issue is if you cue up an awesome song, but then what you do is you lower the song below the sound of the sound effects and the punches and the Foley and everything else. I take an issue, because if you're going to have an awesome needle beat, I want you to crank that song. I don't care about the realistic audio, what you'd be hearing. Based on what you just said, Mridul, I'm curious if you agree with that or disagree, or if it just depends for you. And Zach, you too. I'm curious how you guys feel on that.
For me, it depends on the moment. Like I definitely would play around with something like that. To me, like there's no rules, right? Like any rule that you would present me, I would deny. That's my like approach.
Right.
So, but I generally think that like the music is too low mixed on most movies. But I think that comes from an angle of like valuing the musicality of movies a bit more than other people. Zach, what's your opinion?
I would be very similar. I think it very much depends on what I'm trying to do with the perspective of the character that I'm trying to focus on. This is something that I've actually been playing around with a little bit with Coalescence and another film that I'm currently shooting in regards to the perspective of the character in the scene. Is the music diegetic or non-diegetic? and like how can I use it to, emphasize the emotionality and the perspective.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think cranking it and like almost to the point where it's like just overly loud and you can't really hear anything over it can be a very good choice for like certain situations or emotions. Other times, I mean, obviously, if there's a situation where dialogue needs to happen over it, I mean, you want to be able to hear the dialogue, but unless it's a artistic choice where it's like somebody's talking, but like the music is playing over, and it's like somebody's in their head type of a thing.
Yeah. I actually did.
I don't know,
I think
but yeah,
I did.
It's very much.
Sorry for cutting you off, but I did play
Oh, no, you're
around
good.
with that a little bit in film 3, where like, so there's the trailer music is a song called "Stressed by Justice," and I really love that music. But in the film, it's like I actually put the whole setup to the music, and then I have it play for like 10 seconds, and then I just lower it completely. And then I intentionally had that as like the trailer music for you to like enjoy the music and recognize that in the film, and then like be like, nah, it's over, because like I feel like it plays into the scene where like his mission is interrupted by this girl. So like I think like there's certain like ways that you can play around and like even annoy the audience in terms of the needle drop, and like it can work.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Side note, I saw Justice live back in 2011, 2013 or something like that. I can't remember if that was
Yeah.
on one of the albums that were out at the time, but yeah, pretty interesting experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you know the song?
I recognized it, but I didn't I couldn't put I was like, I've heard this somewhere. I can't remember. I could have just Shazammed it, I guess. But
Okay.
what a great way to learn is from Mridul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's do Zach. Yeah, Mridul, you've been generous with your time. You've been chatting with us for so long. Let's each do one more question.
I could talk to you the whole day. I don't know.
We believe
It's
you.
my favorite.
We'll talk more after this recording is done. But like
Yeah.
our viewers.
This has to be somewhat viewable for.
I know.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm gonna ask my final question. Then you can do yours after. Is that cool with you? Okay.
Sounds good.
My question is not deep, but just curious.
Yep.
Just a curiosity. This movie deals a lot with vigilantes, to a certain extent.
Yep. Yeah.
One of our mutual filmmaker acquaintances for us, friends for us, but like close friend with you, Mohit,
Yeah.
in the great wonderful land of Australia, he made a movie about vigilantes. I am curious if Void Man had any influence on Bring Back the Color. And also, this is more of a dumb American not being in your country question. Was that the same bridge at the end that was in Moat's film? Or no?
Okay. Was not the same bridge.
Okay, it looked very similar.
I didn't actually even realize that I like somewhat like did a similar shot. But like afterwards, I was like, someone pointed out, and I was like, oh yeah, I did do that. But because me and Mohit are like so close, there's gonna be some influence, like naturally. He definitely does push me in certain like areas. I think he certainly pushes me in terms of building up more of like a sense of scale. And I think he pushes me into like the external, and I push him into the internal. And there's like two like kind of conflicting. I think his film 3 is also gonna be like you're gonna see some influences from me. But Mohit is a genius, and I am like proud to say that I'm influenced by him, and I'm proud to say that he's my friend, and like I would take it as a badge that like he influenced me in 19, like he was 19, he made Void Man, and my friend did a great thing, and that did influence me. But at the same time, a lot of that was unconscious.
Nice. Zach, your question.
That's really cool.
He actually messaged me right
All
as I
right.
said that.
Really? We've summoned him. We've said his name 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh man. You have a lot of uses of mirrors, particularly in more contemplative scenes or sequences.
Yeah.
Jordan also mentioned this in one of his videos that he did. I was curious how the how am I going to word this? What the progression was like with choosing the different. I mean, of course, with Last Day of Childhood, you have a younger version of yourself, and then Egomaniac, you have your dad, and then in this one, you have another. What I'm assuming is a younger version of yourself.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the things that I did not. I wasn't quite able to figure out as much with film 3 was like, what is he thinking in these moments?
Yeah.
Do you mind shedding some light on some of that? Because
Yeah.
I want to know. I'm curious
So-
because we see that
Yeah.
that younger version multiple times.
So in Lost Day of Childhood, he doesn't see a younger version of himself. He just like sees himself. There is like some other stuff I can talk about, which I don't want to reveal, but he doesn't see the younger version of himself.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in this, he sees the younger version of himself, and it just kind of like there's also like voiceover of the younger version of himself. To me, I actually love that this question has come up because we actually began the interview with like the same question, and it's like full circle
okay.
kind of moment. So this is like the perfect way to end this interview because that's how I like kind of structure my films as well. Anyways,
Nice.
I just love a motif, right? So with a motif and a symbol, the way that I add meaning to it is each time I display it differently. Like if you show like an apple at the start of the film and the end of the film, and it's just the same apple, it's like kind of meaningless to a certain extent. But if you show an apple that like starts off like fresh, and then at the end of the film it goes to an apple, and then the apple has become rotten, like that all of a sudden feels like very profound because it's just a symbol that changes and it's like you don't expect it coming and stuff. So that's how I approach all of my symbols, even like every single symbol. There's like I don't even know how many symbols there are. Like the beard, for example, like that's one of them. I'll give a clue. Like there's all this like endless stuff, which that's just like the symbol must change for it to have meaning. So that's my approach to the mirrors. And also there's like a big sense of time relating to like the film's themes as well, which the mirror kind of foreshadows, I think.
Nice. So fascinating. Mridul, thank you so much for joining us today in this wonderful interview.
Thank you.
It's always a blast getting to talk about you and your movies. And do you have any kind of final messages for the folks listening and watching at home?
If you're watching this, just trust that there is a vision behind the film. If you see something and you think it's pointless and just weird for the sake of being weird, I promise you, like, there's a lot of thought into it. And if you want something more normal, I will be making more normal stuff for a little bit. So yeah, if you like the film, the best thing you could do is just share it around. I feel like it's pretty entertaining, and support Doom Productions. I'm a big fan of them. I've been like watching all of your videos lately, because I'm just trying to get back into the filmmaking zone. So Doom Productions is also like a really great filmmaking resource. I would have probably not been able to make the movie the way I have, like with the way I planned this days was based on a video that Jordan made about like planning a shoot. So Doom Productions is like a great resource if you watched the film and you enjoyed it and you're like, how the hell did he make this? Then Doom Productions is like a part of that puzzle, I guess.
Thank you. We love your works.
Yeah.
Your films are brilliant. Can't wait to see what you do next. And this
Thank you.
has been awesome. Thank you so much.